This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Happy Fantopia Friday, everyone. I am Erica Lukes here from a very stormy Utah, and this just reminds me that I need to give a shout out to all of the people who are experiencing really unusual weather patterns right now. I want to give my love to people in Florida and actually in Mexico. There's some really interesting things going on, really alarming things. I pray for everybody, as I know all of you do as well. Our thoughts will be with you, and we hope that everything will work out for the best. And this is an interesting time we're living in, but thoughts and prayers will be sent to those who are experiencing of this. And tonight I want to just give a shout out to all of my friends who are in the chat room, specifically my bud, Jeff Cox, he is one of my dear friends, and he's my research partner. And Jeff was with Nellis Air Force Base. He was chief of aviation safety, and I really appreciate his great logical approach to things. We work really, really well together, and I can't wait to go out in the field and do some investigating. Speaking of Florida, I want to tell you tonight that on the History Channel, Chris Geritano, who was on my show a couple weeks ago, is making his debut tonight on History with the Dark Files, and he actually is in Florida. He is right on the beach, so I've been messaging him and giving him my best, and hopefully he will be at his mother's house and he can watch the premiere and be safe, and we really wish him the best of luck. But, tonight I have someone who has probably ruffled a few feathers in the UFO community, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily such a bad thing. I met my guest tonight at the MUFON Symposium a couple years ago, and I remember walking by and seeing him sitting at lunch and just knowing that I needed to talk to him, and we ended up connecting and sharing some stories. And I have seen him at a couple other places, and I have to say that I really was quite charmed by my conversation with him. Very logical, kind, and everywhere I go that I see him, I have to make him sing, because Robert Schaefer has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard, and it's just a lot of fun hanging out with him. But like I said, he can be a little instigator sometimes, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. Robert Schaefer is a writer with a lifelong interest in astronomy and the question of life on other worlds. He is one of the leading skeptical investigators of UFOs, a founding member of the UFO subcommittee of the well-known Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. He is also founding director and past chairman of the Bay Area Skeptics, a local skeptics group in the San Francisco Bay Area. Mr. Schaefer wrote Psychic Vibrations, column back in the Skeptical Inquirer, and for almost 40 years, his book Psychic Vibrations has been reprinted, and some of his columns, you can find his work everywhere. It is very interesting to read. His most recent book, Bad UFOs, came out in 2016, and that is also the name of his skeptical blog. His writings and reviews have appeared in such diverse publications as Omni Scientific America, Spaceflight Astronomy, The Humanist, Free Inquiry, Reason, and others. He lives in San Diego, California, where he gets to go out and look at the total eclipse. I'm really jealous because you went up to Idaho. Tell us about that.
Oh, thank you, Erica. Yes, I've enjoyed our chats too at these different conferences. Yeah, it's about 1,000 miles from San Diego up to Idaho Falls. I drove up there about taking about 3 days to go up and 3 days to go back with a few little stops here and there on the side. It's an amazing thing. I had tried to see one total eclipse before when I was in college, and my buddy and I we took the bus down for the Greyhound bus from Chicago down to Florida Panhandle near Tallahassee to see the total eclipse, and unfortunately it was cloudy. All we saw was it get dark. You could see the shadow on the clouds, and we had to go back and spend another couple days on the bus just to get home. But this time it was much better. In fact, we had really good weather throughout the West in Oregon and Idaho and Wyoming. Everybody had a really good view of it, and I tell you, it's just about the most amazing thing. And unfortunately, it only lasted about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but it was, I gotta say, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. So
And
I've got more on that on the Bad UFOs. If anyone wants to see my pictures, just go to badufos.com.
and they're stunning. And I will say that I was, at first I was thinking, I can't believe all these people are driving up there and da 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 da. And just from what I saw here, I mean, it truly was, like you say, one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. And I wish I would have just gotten in my car and fought the traffic and driven up to Idaho, because that was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, you were a lot closer to it than I was, and so when we got to Salt Lake City, it's kind of like, oh, we're almost there.
It's so cool. And you're quite a photographer, and you've been studying astronomy, and you're out there with your telescope. Tell us about your astronomy and what kind of telescope you have.
Well, I have several telescopes, and it's just a question of where I'm going to be going and what I'm going to be looking at to determine, which one makes the trip. My smallest telescope I have, like a 90 millimeter Meade ETX 90. It's a little Cassegrainian telescope, like the size of what is it, cream of wheat can, a little cylinder. Does anybody eat cream of wheat anymore? I don't think so. But and then the biggest one I have, a 11-inch Celestron with a GPS, and works really well. But if you set it up in the sky where you're on the city lights and so on, it's kind of a wasted effort. You can't see that much. But if I go out to the club, astronomy club has an observing site about 60 miles east of here, out near the desert, and could see a whole lot more out there. So sometimes I'll go out and set up the big scope there.
That is so much fun. I mean, I love it. I've got 2 telescopes that I've just purchased, and it is so much fun to set them up. But unfortunately, my motherboard in the GPS is broken, and so I have to adjust it. And this thing is huge. It's just a monster. So every time I adjust it and then find something, it's like 2 seconds later I have to readjust it. But it's so amazing to me just to get that out there and look up and think we live in what a beautiful world, and what a beautiful universe. There's so many interesting things to learn about.
Yeah, I like to see the faint galaxies in some of these regions where you look in the galaxy clusters in Virgo and Pegasus and wherever, and you just you see 1 or 2 faint galaxies, and then you look very carefully, and there's 3, 4, 5, 6 more. And then each little puff, it looks like a little piece of cotton or something. Each one of those is a Milky Way, is a galaxy, just like our own. It's just truly amazing how many there are.
So you've got a group of people that you go out with then, and do you ever talk about UFOs?
It's the San Diego Astronomy Association. It's it's an amateur astronomy club in the San Diego region. Actually, believe it or not, these people almost never talk about UFOs. A couple of them know that I have this interest, and then I write the skeptical blog and books and so on. And so occasionally, somebody else, oh, did you hear about this or that? But no, we really don't. Really, astronomers, both professional and advanced amateurs, very seldom see what they consider to be UFOs, just because they understand the sky pretty well, and so they're not likely to make a mistake where they see Venus or something like that, or a bright meteor and think it's a UFO.
Do you ever think, though, because I know when you're studying astronomy or when you're looking through a telescope, you're looking at a pretty specific area, and so sometimes I wonder what I've personally seen and what others report appears to be here in our atmosphere, not up there, and so I wonder if perhaps when you're just focused on a small area, if you're not going to be missing things.
I suppose you could make that argument that, yes, the telescope only sees a tiny little piece of the sky. And in fact, when you're using a larger telescope like the 11-inch, typically you're looking at an area that's smaller than the moon, maybe only half as big as the moon. So theoretically, yes, you could miss a lot of things. But on the other hand, you're not, you don't have your eye glued to the eyepiece all the time. You're probably spending at least 50% of the time, either looking for something else or just kind of staring up, looking at the Milky Way, whatever. So, no, I think if something were there, I think, we would spot it if it were something visible.
But do you think, though, sometimes because we have such we always try to rationalize everything, which of course is a good thing. But do you think sometimes there could be something that is truly anomalous that our brain just says, okay, well, that's a plane, and then we dismiss it and we don't really delve into it and look any further?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're suggesting. You're saying that, well, something up there would be anomalous, but we would perceive it as a plane or something. Well, perhaps, but I would think that it'd be more likely to go in the other direction. That is, we all see planes and we don't get too excited with them, but a lot of people, we all know about UFOs. We all know about stories of aliens and so on. And a lot of people, maybe not trained astronomers, but a lot of people are, much more likely to see something up there that might be like a plane seen under rather unusual circumstances, or one that has unusual lights, or is being used in some unusual way. And their mind is more likely to fill in the details of something like that, and more likely to perceive it as, a saucer or a saucer-shaped object.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Human perception is interesting, and I think that there are certain people that, even if the mothership landed 2 feet away from them, they wouldn't be able to even register that.
Oh, I'm quite sure I would. If the mothership were out there and hovering.
I'm going to send the mothership to you tonight.
Well, why don't you do that? And I'll be outside at 8:00. We'll see what happens.
I'm going to make you do the CE5 protocols.
Oh, I know. I've heard about that. I haven't ever seen that. That was Stephen Greer's invention, right?
Actually, that's been around much longer than Stephen Greer, but I think that he was, he kind of pushed that out there. And so because he's associated with it, and people don't necessarily, there's a lot of mixed opinions about him. I think that it gets a bad rap.
Well, I was down in Mexico, and this was back in '96. Okay, there was a UFO tour of Mexico that was being arranged by a group calling itself, what was it, Beyond Boundaries or something like that. And Ruben Uriarte, you probably know him. He was on this trip also, and he and I actually we hung out quite a bit there. And
he's a great guy. I love Ruben.
Yeah, I really like him. And but anyway, so we were down with this group. I think it was Metepec, which is where is it? It's a ways off from Mexico City. It's where Jaime Maussan finds all of his alien creatures and dead aliens and things like that around there. And they have like a club there in Metepec, and these people are very sincere. They were trained, however, by Stephen Greer when he, like a year or so earlier in this CE5 thing. And so they would, their leader would sort of give like this an invocation. Really, it was almost like a prayer, like, dear aliens, you are out there in this UFO on the backside of the moon. Please come and honor us with a visit and show us, what you can do. And we sat out there for quite a while. Of course, nothing happened, but But it was very interesting and very enjoyable.
Well, that's good, and I love the fact that you're actually willing to go out there and experience that, because I think that's important. I think when you're a skeptic or when you're a true believer or whatever, you need to be willing to get out there and see what the other side is talking about.
Oh yeah, we did quite a bit of that. In fact, and on another night we were out there and nobody was really seeing anything. They said, well, the UFO usually comes about 1:40 a.m. and it starts over here and it moves over there. And really, I'm quite sure they're just talking about airplanes that are coming out of the airport, in Mexico City and flying south and heading down towards, South America. Especially when it keeps a fairly regular schedule like that, you can be quite sure it's either well, it wouldn't be a satellite if it were every day at the same time, because it wouldn't work out that way. But certainly an airplane is and that's what we saw. We saw them like pointing at oh, see, that's over there. Oh, maybe that one's an airplane, but the next one will be a real UFO.
Well, but I mean, do you think though that UFOs could mimic aircraft?
Well, since I don't really know what a UFO would be, I guess I couldn't say that it isn't, But on the other hand, I would be surprised something like that. It's almost like saying, you see that rabbit hopping over there. It's not really a rabbit. It's it's one of it's a devilish imp disguised as a rabbit or something like that. It's kind of when we say Occam's razor doesn't like explanations like that. Occam has a long beard when people are making explanations like that. I mean, if it looks like an airplane and it flies like an airplane, it sounds like an airplane, and I see no reason to think it's anything other than an airplane.
Right, but I mean, it's interesting. When I was involved with MUFON, I noticed that a lot of investigators, would subscribe to the same feeling that you have, where if it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, blah blah blah, or quacks like a duck, it is, and they weren't investigating the cases thoroughly, and they were closing cases that, in my opinion, could have been something that deserved investigation, a little bit more thorough investigation. So sometimes I think there's a mistake to just assuming that something is A, B, C, or D without putting it through the proper paces.
I suppose, but again, it's hard to know. I mean, if something really looks like an airplane, and I just don't see any reason that you would conclude it wasn't, and especially when you can use binoculars. If the people are out there and they're trying to observe objects. Now, if this is just something that happens randomly and people are not expecting it, then they might not have their binoculars ready or whatever. But if you're going to go out and do some observing, whether it's astronomical or ufological or whatever, have your binoculars with you and whatever else you might have. That if something turns out that looks a little bit strange, magnify it. Get right on it and see what it is. Don't speculate.
Well, and you mentioned on your blog, you talk a lot about different apps, Heavens Above, different websites that you can go to. And I think that all of us who are out in the field, we have, 5 different apps that we're looking at, checking aircraft traffic, anything, all of this. And so I think there's so much technology that we can use to rule out the mundane.
Yeah. And I noticed some people are almost opposed on principle to doing this. There was one fellow who used to come to I attend a lot of the local MUFON meetings in San Diego. Very nice folks. And we don't argue or anything. We discuss. I don't say too much. But one fellow he would say, well, each night he would go out and there would be these bright objects that would be moving. And from the way he described them, they sounded very much like bright satellites that he's seeing after sunset. And, I said, did you look, all you got to do is write down the exact time that you saw this, and just, because the web, like Heavens Above will have the information of exactly when it appears, where it's at its highest, when it disappears, and so on. And just check that information against what you're seeing, and see if it matches, because I think in a lot of cases it will. And he just didn't want to do that because it's like, I don't want to be all, logical about it or something. Some people really don't want their UFOs cases to be explained. Or David Clarke in his book, which is How UFOs Conquered the World, British ufologist, the skeptical sort. He said one woman who he talked to and explained something that she had seen, and she said, "I'm not going to let you take this away from me, this sighting away from me." And that's it's kind of like, I don't want to know what it is. I just want to believe I've seen something really amazing. So.
Oh, it is interesting because I think that you do have people that honestly, in my opinion, have had pretty profound experiences, and then they are looking for answers, and then, Lord help them, they get involved in ufology or turn to organizations that shall remain nameless. But you look for answers, and then you're just getting thrown a bunch of garbage. And I think that's really unfortunate because I think a lot of these people have probably had something significant and unexplainable happen to them, but there's so much garbage, and it's hard to weed through really and separate fact from fantasy. It's this. You've been in this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it's a mess.
Yeah, people get so invested in. And it's just the same in so many other things in politics and whatever else. People get invested in some particular position and don't want to give it up. And
But, what would it take for you to be convinced that there was something remarkable going on?
Well, if we're talking about personal experience, if I just saw something up close and personal, it wouldn't have to be like a landing or something, but, something big and structured and hovering and whatever, like it's so often reported, I'd believe it if I saw it. But it doesn't even have to be me. It could be just, for example, if a news crew from some reputable organization, takes the photo or takes, a video of something, and it's seen by enough people, because that's the clue, that's the key there. And, one or two people or a small group of people off by themselves in a field somewhere can be mistaken, especially, if like somebody who was like the leader says, "Oh, look at that. That's an anomalous object." And the people are going to be kind of likely to follow. But if we're getting, if it's enough people, if something flies over a city and enough people see it and enough people get independent photographs, not people who are talking to each other, but independently, then then that's something that's very be difficult to explain, and I would take something like that very seriously. But unfortunately, those things don't happen.
Well, we're going to talk about that because I've got, I would like to talk to you about the Phoenix Lights. I know that you've written about that. But I just want to say we are Erica Lukes. I'm here with Robert Schaefer. You can go to badufos.blogspot.com. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. Bowl for Life is a non-profit organization founded in 2013 by Chuck Gardner with one simple goal: to grow the sport of bowling worldwide. Over the years, Bowl for Life has given out thousands of dollars in scholarships to youth bowlers around the world. Our focus is to nurture integrity, honesty, professionalism, as well as respect into bowlers both young and old. You can help us by going to bowlforlife.com. Even the smallest donation goes a long way to breaking down the barriers and helping us assist people of all ages to improve their skills as well as knowledge of the game. Bowl for Life is happy to be partnered with other great organizations like the Youth Education Services Fund, as well as the United States Bowling Congress, with many spectacular integrated events planned in the near future. To learn more, go to bowlforlife.com. That's bowlforlife.com.
Each week, join Patrick Phillips as he takes you inside Hollywood. In-depth celebrity interviews, the very latest entertainment news, and more. Patrick Phillips hosts Pop Culture Tonight.
Join me Thursdays at 1 p.m. right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
How do you like your radio? A little strange, a little scary, maybe a little maze-mo, just for good measure. Well, then tune into After Hours AM right here on KCOR Digital Radio Network. Every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we take you on a journey between the strange, unusual, and sometimes downright scary. Again, that's After Hours AM, broadcasting right here on KCOR Digital Radio Network, 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern, every Monday night.
Paranormal, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the Paranormal.
Live Saturday night, 6 to 9 on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
It was a typical Floyd Mayweather fight where he kind of lounges back for a couple rounds, lets the guy get tired, and then he throws a few punches and he wins the fight.
It's over, okay. Well, was the guy good, though? Was he a good fight? I did not get a chance
to see it. It was interesting to watch. It felt weird. I described watching the fight as having been with a really expensive hooker that only gave me oral and then made me finish with my hand.
Wow.
Is that clear enough for you, Dave?
I'm sorry I pushed
really
that button. I'm sorry I pushed that button.
It was kind of cool, kind of weird, and then kind of disappointing, okay?
Thanks for sharing, in the words of Dave. That's his,
you had
that's
to
his
ask.
I had to poke the bear.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. I'm Erica Lukes here on UFO Classified. I want to thank my wonderful producer and radio station owner, Tina Marie, for always doing an exceptional job. She is a great producer. I am very grateful for her and for all of you. Thank you for listening and getting in chat, asking thoughtful questions. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't get a message from somebody all over the world asking questions and wanting to know more about this. And I really hope that I can give people good information. This is a very curious field, and all of us are going to be wrong multiple times because we're studying something or looking into something that is unknown. And I just want to say that just keep researching, keep looking for good information. My guest tonight is Robert Schaefer. Not only does he have the most beautiful voice ever, I'm just going to embarrass him again, but he is a skeptic, and he is definitely ruffled a few feathers, but he is also a writer. He has an interest in astronomy and is one of the world's leading skeptical investigators on UFOs. So, Robert, thank you for being here. And like I mentioned when I opened in my monologue, it has really been a pleasure to connect with you and meet with you and talk, because we've had some pretty fascinating conversations at different conferences.
Yeah, my pleasure, Erica.
Well, and it's good. I love, to me, it's important for me to know the person and to know, why did you get into this? And I think that's one of the first questions I asked you. I want to ask you that now. Why have you been so passionate about this subject for your entire adult life?
Well, maybe that's a hard question to answer. When I was younger, and we're talking, when I was growing up during the 1950s, and it was, in those days, it was, Major Keyhoe in the early 60s. We didn't really have these UFO organizations so much, except for NICAP, I guess, was the only one that was really functioning at that time. And, you'd hear the talk that, the Air Force knows much more about UFOs than they're willing to tell us. And it sounded kind of plausible. I would go out and a couple times I saw something that I thought was, unexplainable. Now, since then, I've learned a lot more. And I realized that, for example, the incident that I saw looked like there were these three objects that were just overhead, and they just kind of, glided ahead of me toward the south, and then they got down at like around 10 degrees or something and disappeared. And I realize now that this was a flock of birds. It was migratory birds that were flying south for the winter because it was toward the end of the summer. Very similar to what they saw, the famous Lubbock lights was that. And then I started to, read more about it. Of course, I came across the book by Menzel, or actually by that time, a couple of books, Menzel and Boyd, I think in '63. Mm-hmm. And then I, started to think about it from a scientific perspective. And then but it remains something fascinating because there's also, this whole question of SETI and so on, of, potentially using radio to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence. If you can find extraterrestrial intelligence out there, that's the hard part. I mean, when you consider how large the universe is, it's just unbelievably vast, as we were saying earlier. And yet, when you just think of the sheer number of galaxies and the sheer number of stars in each galaxy and the number of planets, it's a phenomenal number. And it would be absurd to say that, none of those out there would have any intelligent beings on them. I mean, we evolved here. There's nothing special about here. Whatever happened here could happen elsewhere, or something, similar. It wouldn't be exactly the same kind of life forms, but, something similar maybe. But the problem is we have no idea where this would be, and in all likelihood, they're so far away. I mean, even the closest star, Alpha Centauri, is 50,000 times as the distance to Jupiter. So you think how long, if we send our probes out to Jupiter, how long does that take? A couple of years. Multiply that by 50,000, and that's how long it would take that same probe to get out to Alpha Centauri. And that's just the closest star. So, it's finding them is going to be a real problem, assuming that they're out there. And even if we can find them and establish a link of communications, our messages can travel at the speed of light, but certainly our spacecraft can't. So I think it's just got a real absurdly bad problem in trying to, travel around it at high speeds and actually, visit other planets. Is not, the real life isn't like Star Trek, but they just, bounce around.
Oh, don't, you seriously, just freaking let the air out of my balloon.
But it's true.
But I mean, I wonder, and honestly, the more I look at this and research on my own, the more I wonder if jumping to the extraterrestrial hypothesis is the way to go. I mean, could there perhaps be a life form here that has been interacting with us that we haven't discovered yet? And are we making a mistake to automatically just push it up there to the extraterrestrial?
There's a lot of people have made that argument. I mean, Jacques Vallée certainly, and Hynek in his later years was really into this, idea that we could be seeing something from another dimension or whatever. And, you can hypothesize about that. But, if there were a life form here and it only, popped out for very brief periods of time, I mean, I just don't know what that would supposedly mean, because what is it doing when it's not, appearing as a UFO? Is it hiding under the ground or something? I mean, our planet we've really explored A lot of it, I mean, no, not just a lot of it, I mean, the surface and it's explored under the ocean to some extent. It's very difficult for me to imagine anything really big is hiding out down there. And I guess that also applies to Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and things like that. I would not think that, this hidden life form is too likely. Of course, some people say there's a whole breakaway civilization, full of high technology and whatever that we just don't know about. Well, where are they? They launch something up into space, it's going to make a big, rocket plume and whatever. How do they get these things up there? And we don't even see it, and we don't even know that they're there. All kinds of strange things being
right. Well, I mean, it's hard because there. I mean, you do. There are a lot of leaps out there, but I think, and that I'm going to be visiting Hesdal in Norway, and in my opinion, after 30 years, they have done some very significant work in a very scientific manner, and so perhaps that's what we need to, how we need to focus and collect scientific data on this. I mean, what do you think?
I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say when you get back from there, because let me tell you my perspective on this. And I'd heard a lot about Hessedalen, as he calls it, Dr. Strand, who was the director of that project there. He spoke, as you recall, at the UFO Congress back in February, and I'm sure you must have heard him speak, and I heard his talk. And the one thing that struck me immediately, he said, we started this investigation back in 1983. Okay, that's 34 years ago that they've been studying these lights in the sky. And after 34 years and they still don't really know what it is, that by itself is kind of very odd. I had a little bit of a chance to talk to him afterwards, and I asked him, about like telescopes and binoculars, and because, for example, all those pictures that they have are basically wide-angle pictures of these, lights in the sky, and it's like, don't they have either a zoom lens or a telephoto lens? Can't they get in closer and see this? Don't they carry binoculars and pick them up, or have a spotting scope set up on a tripod so that, when they're out there looking, they can just, point it at the thing and see what it is? And he said, well, we do have them, but we don't use them much because it's difficult to, focus on something when it's moving.
Right.
Which is true. But most of these things are reported as not really moving very fast. And of course, if you have binoculars, on a strap around your neck, you can just, in seconds, you can just look up at it and see it. But that doesn't seem to be happening. And
I think, though,
I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's kind of like, oh, well, he's skeptical, so I don't want to talk to him. And so, maybe you can get some more information there. And especially, if you have binoculars.
Oh, I do.
All right. Well, make sure you bring them, and make sure every time you're out there looking at anything, make sure that you have your binoculars right there with a strap around your neck, so that if anything turns up, because like he showed in his talk, he showed a picture of something in the distance, and it was way in the distance. I mean, you're up on a mountain and you're looking at something that's probably 30 miles or 50 miles away, and it's like a little dot or something off in the distance. And he said this thing was there for 4 hours. Now, to me, it looked like it might be like a mirage image of a peak that's not normally visible, and it's only visible when certain, meteorological conditions are met. But that doesn't. The point is it's 4 hours just sitting there. Doesn't that give you enough time to set up your spotting scope and get it in at 40 power and 60 power and see what it really is? Nobody's doing that.
You know what? I would be shocked if I know that they have quite a few videos and images, and he's been sharing some of his research with me. And I think it's a challenge because when you're out, this is boring, honestly. Most of the time, nothing happens. You're out there, okay, yawning, what am I going to have for dinner, blah, blah, blah. And when something happens, I think, first of all, you're stunned. And second of all, you might not have, like some of the people that observe this, the best photographic skills. And as you know, it's incredibly difficult to take photos at night. And when you do take a photo, even of the moon or something like that, it just looks like a blob. So I think
you've got to get a tripod and everything for your camera if you're going to take pictures at night. And you have a zoom lens, if at all possible, so that you can, take some pictures with the wide angle and show the whole scene. But then some of you want to zoom in and get, very close to it. So you want to, prepare yourself and in advance to be ready for something like this.
But it is challenging, though, and I think a lot of times we talk about, people will always say, okay, well, why aren't there any good photos or videos? Everyone has a cell phone or yada, yada, yada. And it's like, well, I know, first of all, I don't take that many great photos on my cell phone, especially if something that is kind of shocking you, there's so many things that go into that. And maybe whatever this is, if it's an intelligence, doesn't really want you to have a photograph. I don't know. I think that...
Well, that's what Bud Hopkins was saying, and some other people are saying, and every time the aliens would come into somebody's bedroom, the cameras would break and the videos would stop, and it's just really, it's a shame.
I think that you just need to have a sighting. This is what I've decided.
I've had too many sightings. That's it. I've seen too many oddball things up there, and after a little while, I realized, what's that? Oh, it's just a bird, or it's satellite, or whatever. There's a lot of things, and now we got, people have these drones, and these drones have lights on them, some of them, and this can really be an interesting light show that some people see, or there'll be parachutists who will jump out of airplanes at night with flares attached to their ankles, and they'll go, blazing all the way down and visible from miles away.
That's just rude.
Things up there to see.
Don't they know that we're trying to look for UFOs?
Well,
but I would love to ask you more. When we're out there and we're really looking for something, it is important to be a trained observer. And I had Dr. Richard Haynes on the show, and we were talking about that. He's written, a really great book on how to identify things and to rule out the mundane. And you have a lot of experience in that as well. So what are your, if you are out there looking, what is your process for ruling out the mundane?
Well, like I said, I would prepare in advance. I'd have my binoculars with me, if possible, a spotting scope, like you can buy in sporting goods stores for not terribly much. And of course, it would have to be on a tripod. And you want a camera, preferably a single lens reflex camera with, zoom lens. And hopefully a long zoom lens that you can, zoom right in and zoom right out. And just be ready to photograph anything that's there. If it's holding still, then certainly you need to get it in your telescope, your spotting scope or whatever. If it's moving slowly, use your binoculars and try to see what it is. If it's moving slowly, there's a good chance it might be some sort of a plane or, possibly, even like a balloon or somebody. Sometimes I think if people know that the UFO watchers are up there, you're going to have clowns who are going to be, sending up hot air balloons with candles and, stuff like that. Here, you want a UFO? I'll give you one.
But there are regulations, and I know when I was doing some research on this anomalous light phenomenon, there are a majority of the states have outlawed Chinese lanterns. There are all sorts of things like that people might say, oh, well, it's A, B, C, and D, but again, it's like, well, how long are they in the sky? Because a Chinese lantern, the fuel cell will only burn for, 10 to 15 minutes, if that. And so, it's just interesting. I think you really have to learn about aircraft. What are the flight routes coming in? How do airplanes behave? When do they turn on their landing lights? Yada, yada. And there's so many things. Like here in Utah, we have some interesting airspace here. In fact, we've got the NSA here in Dugway Proving Ground, and so we've got some of the most restricted airspace in the world. So there are places that airplanes don't fly in the Salt Lake Valley. And it's when you're investigating this, all of these things come into play, and you really have to know what you're looking at, what you're identifying, what you're and that's because there are people like you who will who will make sure that we're on point.
Yeah, well, just because something is illegal or a type of a flight is not allowed doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means somebody might do it and hope on plan to get away with it. But
right, but I think that's an important thing, though, to look at, because I think people assume that everybody's launching Chinese lanterns, and they are incredibly dangerous, and they are illegal, and in a lot of states. And so, they're all of these things. You have to look at a broad scope when you're investigating this, and not just assume.
Well, that's why I said that a spotting scope would be a really good choice, because usually these things will have like a zoom, either a zoom eyepiece or a couple different eyepieces, and you switch between about like 20 power and 60 power, and that's enough to get a really good look at something. And so I would think you'd probably be able to identify it at a higher magnification, and even if it's something that's unidentified, like a saucer with an alien face in it, well, you'll see that.
But even if you saw that like through a spotter scope or your binoculars, what proof is there?
Well, it would be proof to me and anybody who was with me. If I could photograph it clearly, then that would be another level of proof. But it's not. It's true. If I see something or you see something, it doesn't mean other people are going to see it, and so then they're going to have to say, well, how credible are we, and so on. But like I said, the key, the holy grail in this is trying to get good, reasonably clear UFO photos of something that by a lot of people who are independent of each other and are not talking to each other. And yet they all photograph the same thing and they all report the same thing. Then, something was definitely up there, something anomalous. And then the question is, what was it? And then how clear is somebody's photos and so on, this sort of thing.
I know it's a never-ending thing, and I want to ask, because we've got some really great questions here in the chat room. But one of the questions is, if you were intent on looking for UFOs and detecting them, what would you use? And you've mentioned the spotter scope and binoculars. What else?
I would pretty much just that. Your camera, of course.
Okay.
Some people like to use these infrared devices or these image intensifiers that they think you can see. Yeah, this night vision. A lot of people use these things. I don't think they're very good for that purpose, because first of all, they pick up a lot of stuff that is there that you normally don't see, like birds, owls especially flying at night, sometimes even moths. You pick up airplanes at a distance, a greater distance than you would normally see them. And also you pick up satellites, because once you start to intensify this a little bit, you're going to see a lot more satellites than you otherwise would. The point I want to make, though, is that these night vision devices are not going to show you anything that you can't see in a pair of good binoculars. And the binoculars, you'll see them more clearly. But I think it will be more striking, when you're using the night vision, because you see, oh, look at that, what's that? It went across so fast. Yeah, you just saw an owl go by, but it doesn't look like an owl. It looks like, a white blob that's, zooming along. If you had seen the same thing in binoculars, you would say, oh, there's an owl. I could see its wings. So,
right. And it's interesting. And I have to say, I'm in looking at the chat room, and Scott Brown from In the Field is in there, and they are very logical with their approach, and they are really great at analyzing and debunking fake photos and all of these things. And he also puts, up there like how each of us can be more observant to some of these things that could fool us, like an owl or things like that. And so I think that's really great. When I was with MUFON, I kept trying to encourage leadership to do that and to make some good videos and have photographic analysts actually put things out there to educate the public on how to look for, things that are explainable, a lens flare, yada, yada, all of these things. But that's what we need, because I do believe that you can pick up things that are anomalous, but we need to weed out the nonsense.
Yeah, the problem is with the night vision devices, you're going to see so much stuff up there that you're not expecting and you're not used to seeing, that there's so many false positives that in that sense, it's not really, I don't think, a very useful thing to have.
One of the questions that I'm getting from chat is if you've ever seen Alison Krause's night vision videos.
I'm not sure of that particular individual, if I've seen her night vision. I've seen some of the others, and again, what I've seen just to me looks like astronomical objects and satellites and airplanes for the most part.
Okay, I will send you some links. In fact, I'll have Scott send me some of her best stuff, and then I will send it to you because I'd love to know your opinion. She really does. She's been very methodical and she studies a lot. And she was over in Hessdalen actually, so I really enjoy looking at her videos and things. But she also, people that don't want to necessarily go down anything anomalous, they take after her, and she's had quite a few negative experiences with people that are kind of nasty.
Oh, really?
In the field. I know that, we all know that there are some really exciting and nasty people in the field.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it isn't. But I just want to say this is so much fun. I love it. We've got to take a break. This is our longer break. I'm Erica Lukes here with Robert Schaefer, and make sure you read all of his work and find out more about him. And I'm going to make you sing before the show's over.
Okay, give me a minute to warm up then.
Okay.
I'll warm up during the break.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Friday. I again want to just send my love and prayers to all the people who are in Florida tonight in the path of Irma. Please be safe. We are thinking of you. And this is just truly, absolutely unbearable and unimaginable that all of these things are happening. But much, much love. My guest this evening is someone who I actually really enjoy hanging out with, even if he kind of gets me going sometimes. And I think he gets quite a few people in this field going. Robert Schaefer is a writer with a lifelong interest in astronomy. He is... you can find him on Bad UFO's blogspot, and he does a lot of things with Omni, Scientific America's Spaceflight Astronomy, The Humanist. He lives in San Diego, California, and he is an opera singer, which I'm just going to mention a few more times because I have to say I love it.
Yeah.
I love listening to you sing.
All right, at the end.
Okay, good. You really
That'll
do have
get
a beautiful
everybody to
voice.
sing, or else they'll leave.
That is not true. You have a beautiful voice, and you actually, I mean, you perform, and you've done that for a long time.
It's hard. Yeah, it's harder. The opera companies are. There's not that many opportunities, and they're mostly looking for those bright young graduates who are just starting out. Not people like me. But
isn't that funny? I remember taking, because I love theater, and I'm a vocal performer. My background was in voice, but I remember taking an acting class, and it was interesting because they were casting. The person who was teaching it was saying, okay, we're going to put you as the hot young thing, and we're going to put you as da da da, and the person that they cast me as was the school teacher. And I was like, really? Okay, that is so rude. I mean, it was just funny. So I know what you mean. It's like the older you get, the more you get kind of cast in these.
Teachers are pretty, pretty fine looking.
Oh,
don't take it as anything, bad.
Well, I don't know. It was kind of shocking to me. I had to go to therapy for quite some time to get over it.
Oh, you were triggered. Oh, that's too bad.
Oh, I know. Seriously. You're learning all these secrets about me. It's frightening. But
well, you're telling everybody on the radio. So
oh, dear.
Not just learning them.
Oh, dear. Well, I just have to say that it's fun to talk to you. And I love the fact that you went up to Idaho, that you love astronomy, that you keep people accountable for things. And I will just go on record as saying that there are people that you've kind of gone after that I actually do respect. And so I know that that's, like Kathleen Marden. She has been wonderful to me. She's taught me a lot. And I know that the two of you have gone at it.
Yeah, we've met, but we're not entirely hostile. But I have to disagree with her interpretations of, concerning her Aunt Betty Hill and such, and what reportedly happened to them. And of course, if we get into that, it would take the rest of the hour and then some. But
all right, we'll just move right along.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about the Phoenix Lights, right?
I do want to talk about Phoenix Lights because you were mentioning in the first hour that, when you've got something that is really credible, you've got a mass sighting where,
yes.
More than 2 or 3 people are seeing this. And with the Phoenix Lights, I mean, there were, 10,000 people out there that were witness to
yeah, at different times. I'm not sure, because there were 2 incidents, right? And this is what most people forget or get confused about. When we talk about the Phoenix Lights on, March 17th or something of, what the heck year was that? 96 or 90? Can't even remember right now. 97.
It's 97.
97, yeah. Well, there were 2 separate incidents. The first one occurred between about 8:45 and 9:45. The second one started right about 10 o'clock and then went on for maybe just half an hour or so. But what people will do is they'll use a picture of one and then talk about the other, and it's totally confused. The second incident is probably easier to maybe get some agreement on, and that was what skeptics and I think not only skeptics say was the flare drop. It was a Maryland Air National Guard that went up. Because, see, this was the last night of, they have a training program that they call Snowbird, Operation Snowbird. And it's for the Air National Guard from all around the country, and also now from some foreign countries, some allied nations also send their pilots over there for training. And basically what they will do for a period of a couple of weeks, I'm not sure, a month, 6 weeks, whatever it is, the pilots will train out there at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And one of the things that they do is they go up, they have this area, it's called a MOA, M-O-A, Military Operations Area. And in MOA, basically, military can do whatever they want. They can bomb things or whatever in there, because it's an area that, civilians have to stay out of. And in this case, they practice dropping these flares so that, it's kind of thing that you would use on a battlefield to illuminate. For example, if you want to see where the enemy's tanks are, this will allow you to see where they are, and then you can go over and bomb them. And so I don't think, now not everybody agrees with this. What's your name? Dr. Lynn. She is quite convinced that these were not flares, but I think most people are willing to agree that they were, because, we even have the name of the guy, I'm trying to remember what it is, who was the lead pilot on that particular mission, and he agreed that, we were up there dropping flares over the Barry Goldwater Range, they call it.
Right.
That's the second half. Okay, that's less mysterious, quote unquote. Now, people say that the first half is more mysterious, what happened before that. And I talked to James McGahey about this. He is a retired Air Force pilot, and he is, familiar with these kind of operations. And now we said that the first half, I think it was the first sightings were at 8:45 or thereabouts. This appeared to be a flying triangle. Now, the reason that so many people were out there to see it was because this was one of the best nights for seeing the comet, the Hale-Bopp comet. And so there was 5 lights in a triangular pattern. Now, according to McGahey, and I think he's correct about this, these were A-10 aircraft. Like, both of them were A-10 aircraft, both incidents, but they're not the same aircraft. They had flown up to Las Vegas, probably Nellis Air Force Base, and were there for a couple of days. They had to come back that night because it was, like I said, the last night for the program for that year, and then the next day they would be headed back to wherever they came from. And they were flying. They did not have their landing lights on. However, they had formation lights, which, as civilians, we're not familiar with this, but the Air Force people are familiar with it. And their bright lights are similar to landing lights, except that, they when they are in a formation, they turn on these lights so that they can see each other. And we have a number of people who actually saw them in binoculars and in a telescope. One fellow, was it Mitch Stanley, I think was his name, who was out there with his telescope. I think he had a 8-inch or 10-inch telescope, and he got a very good, clear picture of them, and he described the aircraft that McGahey says is, a very good description of the A-10, and you could see, the separate lights on these things. So I don't think there's too much mystery there. Now, some people said, well, but we asked the Air Force, and the Air Force said they didn't have anything up. Yeah, they asked Luke Air Force Base, which is in Phoenix, which is not Davis-Monthan. And actually, this was not really an Air Force flight. It was an Air National Guard. And they have completely separate command structures. And frankly, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. If you ask the people in the Air Force what the National Guard is up to, they won't be able to tell you, and vice versa. So you got to ask the right people. Unfortunately, nobody did that before all the records were, after 6 months or whatever, they, shred them or dump them or whatever.
But this case made, immediate. It was in the public eye, in the media, very,
not
very
immediately.
quickly.
No, it waited. It was like 6 months or more before anything made a big thing about it. There were a few reports at the time, but as far as this becoming a big, well-known case, it had a latency here of several months. I don't recall the exact time, but you can talk to somebody who's familiar with this, and they'll confirm it.
But I find it though when you've got hundreds of calls coming into 911 from people all over seeing things, and some observers were saying that this was a solid craft hovering right over them, and you've got people who are truly panicked. It's shocking to me that somebody in the military didn't issue a public statement, and it was only after all of this got out there and kind of spun out of control that we might have been dropping flares, or we might have been doing this or that. That just seems odd to me.
Well, perhaps, but like I said, it was a little bit of a story on the night that it happened and the day after it happened. But as far as it becoming a big story and breaking nationally and everybody hearing about it, that was several months later and again, I don't recall exactly who wrote it, but it was when some newspaper stories were written about it, and then finally this thing reached, shall we say, critical mass. Not until then.
When did the governor, Fife Symington, when did he do his press conference?
Oh, I'm not sure exactly when that was.
I will look it up, but I think that was pretty quickly because there was such a fervor over this. I mean, he went on there in attempts to try to minimize the situation and do some damage control.
That guy in the alien suit come out, and I don't know when that was.
Yeah, that was, and that it's interesting because I actually had the councilwoman, Frances Barwood, who she didn't see anything, but she received hundreds of calls from really concerned people, and she started looking into it, and it was interesting. And she actually said on my show that Fife Symington basically was coerced not to talk about it and not to share his experience and say it was anything unusual, because people were basically holding information over his head that wouldn't serve him well as a public official.
Well, I don't know if I believe that. He wasn't, I don't think, coerced into anything. I think he later decided that it would be to his advantage to make up this story about having seen it, because, as you know, it was several years. I even forget how many years. It wasn't until he was interviewed by, James Fox, whatever year that was, that probably 10 years or more afterwards, then he decided. In fact, if you heard Fox's talk, when he talked about this the last at the UFO Congress, he said that it basically, like, he changed that Symington changed his position, like, between the morning and the afternoon of the day he was being interviewed. It's like, the morning beforehand, no, I didn't see anything, whatever. Then all of a sudden he switched. And now the question is whether you trust this guy Symington. And now I've got some things here that, if I can dig it up on my website, if we just look for Symington, GTON, on Bad UFOs, if you recall, he was in a lot of trouble with this. He was in basically he was convicted of fraud. I'm trying to find the exact. According to, there was a story in the New York Times that it talks about his trouble. It turns out he was one of the people, if you recall, Bill Clinton, on the very last day of his presidency, he issued a whole bunch of pardons to people, and there was a kind of a general feeling that a lot of the people receiving the pardons didn't deserve them. Well, Fife Symington, is one of the guys who received one of those pardons. So the reason that he was not in jail because of his fraudulent financial things. It's because he was given a presidential pardon because he was a good buddy of Bill Clinton. So just from that context, it tells you not to trust the guy, not to trust what he says. And what I wrote, Symington's story has changed again in 2017. Again, I can't. There's too many details here to go on to it. But if you just go into the bad UFOs and you enter, the name Symington, he's got the whole information there.
Well, it's interesting, and I think that when you start looking, well, first of all, if you're in politics, you've got to have a questionable background, I think.
A lot of do, yeah.
Anyway, oh my Lord. But I was at lunch a couple months ago with someone who's a fellow musician, and just a casual conversation, and he talked to me about being in Phoenix at the time of the sighting when the Phoenix lights happened. And he said he was at a payphone, and he pulled me aside and just did not want to talk about this in front of anybody. But he said that what he witnessed was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and he just kept looking around like, okay, is everybody going to come out? And what's happening? It was so.
Was this the first incident or the second?
This was the first incident.
Well, there is a video of that, and again, I have the links to this on the Bad UFOs. It's a video shows this object. It only goes for I forget 30 seconds or something like that, but it shows that they do not keep a rigid position. In other words, there are 5 independent objects that change their position with respect to each other. So it's airplanes in formation. I think that's very clear.
But wouldn't you think, though, that a person would understand what an airplane in formation would look like?
Well, we very seldom, if ever, see airplanes, military aircraft, A-10s in formation, and they're up pretty high, especially like flying over Phoenix, so that, you couldn't easily see what kind of an aircraft it was. And, if you were of a mind to perceive it as a flying triangle or a solid object, again, the mind, fills in a lot of details that the eye doesn't actually see itself.
Yeah, I can't get over the fact, though, that many people would say that there was something really profound and be frightened enough that they'd be calling 911. If it were truly airplanes.
Well, if they really thought they were seeing something extraterrestrial, then they would. And again, we have this background. I mentioned earlier about David Clarke's book, how UFOs Conquer the World. The book is only 1 or 2 years old. And he, goes into this, people's reactions and so on. It's a profound thing for people. And of course, we have sort of grown up in this milieu of UFOs and stories about flying saucers and stories about aliens. We've all seen the little drawings of aliens and flying saucers, and humorous ones and some that are supposed to be serious. And so it's part of our culture now, really.
It is part of our culture, but when you look at the work of Dr. Jacques Vallée, he's gone back and really put together an amazing body of work where he's gone back centuries to look at some of the sightings reports. And
you're
wonder
talking
if
about his book Wonders in the Sky, with
right?
Chris
But
as a couple of people have been, shall we say, looking into that in a very critical eye. One is what's this guy who writes Jason something? Just do a Google search on blunders in the sky, not wonders, but blunders in the sky, which is Jason. I'm trying to think of his last name, and also Martin Kottenmeier has been. Guy never seems to write anything much in a publication, but he's got all kinds of stuff on Facebook about the mistakes and that Albeck and Vallée are guilty of. In fact, it turns out that a lot of their sources are really relying on Charles Fort, which his Book of the Damned and so on, which is not a very good very, very credible reference. But it's by comparing. Scott Meyer's been comparing like line by line what they said the person said, but if you go back to the original, it's really not quite like that. So, it's not as let's say, actually, in fact, Albeck now seems to be kind of backtracking on this, and he says, well, at this point, I don't care so much about what these things really were. I care more about their cultural significance and whatever. So I think he's kind of throwing in the towel on that.
But I think, though, when you look back historically and when you look at different indigenous peoples and you look at some of you look at the Native American culture and you look at the oral traditions passed down. There are things that are very commonplace all across the world, and there are different sightings, different ways people relay things that are all very common. And so at what point do you say, hey, well, when you've got this report or this, occurrence that took place that is documented from 500 years ago, and it's the same type of object behaving the same way that we see now. At what point do you kind of get over yourself and think there might be a pattern here?
Well, first of all, I'm not really convinced that it is the case that, over a period of 500 years that people are reporting the same thing. I think that there's a good deal of, should we say, exaggeration or fashioning the old reports to try to, reporting them in a way that makes them sound like, they have contemporary significance. I would Jason Colavito, Colavito, is a guy who's written a lot of this stuff, and it's out there. He has a blog. Look that up, or just look up Blunders, Blunders in the Sky, which is a page that Jason has put up, and he goes into some of the misreporting and errors and carelessness that's in Vale and Albeck's book.
Well, it's a curious field.
Yes, indeed.
We wonder why we can't come to any resolution. I'm Erica Lutz here with Robert Schaefer. We're going to take a break, and we will be right back with UFO Classified.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Looking for a radio show like no other?
We need something brand new.
Then tune into the KCOR Digital Radio Network, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and get ready for The Quantum Shift. A great shift of consciousness is sweeping across the Earth. Are you ready for the dimensional shift?
It is amazing, is it not?
The Quantum Shift, hosted by Dr. Sam Muggsy and Kent Dunn. Be part of the fifth dimensional reality, where consciousness prevails and the universal law of one is the only true reality. The Quantum Shift. Live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis Coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. For Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everyone, and happy Friday. I want to thank all of my friends in the chat room and just say it is really cool to see all of you guys in here talking. No, I won't be singing, but Robert will be singing. I'm just going to throw that out there. I love you guys. Maybe I'll do a little something on karaoke and play it next time I'm on the show, but probably not. I want to just say that in 10 days, I will be in Hessdalen, Norway, and I am beyond excited. This is actually a dream of mine. I will be working with Erling Strand, who is gracious enough to pick me up at the airport. We will be working with the science team, and I will be going out with his science camp, and we will be with a group of young students who are learning how to use instrumentation to collect scientific data. I have got all of my gear. I've got 4 different cameras, 2 different camcorders, all of these things that I'm taking over there to really kind of videotape and monitor what's going on. And I look forward to coming back and giving some good information to all of you, and also doing hopefully a little documentary or a video so you can learn about Hessdalen and what's taken place there. This will be really cool. My guest tonight is I have to say, a delightful person to have on the show, and I appreciate his tenacity, even if some people in the field don't. Robert Schaefer is an amateur astronomer, and he's been in this field, and there's something that keeps him there, even if he might be a bit skeptical at times. You can go to badufosblogspot.com. He's also written things, and you can find them on Omni, Scientific America, Spaceflight Astronomy. But Robert, I have to say that it's interesting because there was a comment in chat room, and even though people don't want to like you.
Yes,
that
happens sometimes.
Well, you have been.
I got to say this. I think that the situation is slowly improving as far as ufology, because I can remember back when I first got involved and first started to go to any conferences and whatever, back in like the 70s, and people would just be, it's like if it wasn't for you, we'd have the Air Force convinced, and we'd have everybody would believe it. And whatever. And I'm really not finding that anymore, except maybe a few old sourpusses who I think are fewer and fewer of them each year. And mostly it's people, they're okay with it. They understand that they don't have really good solid evidence, but they think, that they can obtain it. And if they can, more power to them. But, until I see something that's really, really, convincing, I'm going to remain on the skeptic side.
So, okay, so I'm going to Hessdalen. What can I do to bring back enough evidence to convince you?
Well, first of all, the UFO or whatever it is the phenomenon so-called has to cooperate and has to show you something that's really worth recording and really worth, studying, other than just, if it's going to be lights in the sky or, airplanes or possibly something the military is doing. First thing, like I said, you got to do it. First, when you see anything, your very first move has to be to get the binoculars up to your eyes and see what you can see about it. I think in most cases, you'll be able to, look, it's just an airplane. I can see the taillights. But if it's not, then okay. Then you want to photograph it, and of course you're going to have a tripod set up. A handheld camera isn't really going to do it. So you got your camera on the tripod with a nice long lens, and whether you're going to be taking videos or still photos, probably videos would be better if you can do what you probably can, and just try to get as much detail as you can on it, and
Okay, well, I will. And I'm going to be sending it to you and saying...
All right, great. I want to see it.
Well, I think you should we need to do like a GoFundMe page so we can get enough money to send you over there with me.
All right, fantastic.
And then we're going to sit in the middle of a field and we're going to do the CE5 protocols.
Do you know the CE5 protocols, or is somebody else going to do them?
You know what? I think maybe somebody else could lead us, but I think that this is there is something there. I absolutely believe that there is a connection between our consciousness and whatever this is. I mean, for me personally, and I really hope you don't write an article tomorrow. I'll pay you if you don't. But for me personally, in my own experiences, I can say that whatever this is, I believe has interacted with me.
Now, have you been there before?
I have not been to Hessdalen, but I've had.
Were you talking about somewhere else?
Just, I've had some interesting experiences in my life, paranormal, quote unquote, or whatever UFO experiences. And I think that's why I got into this, is because I wanted to try to rationalize what I was seeing. And so, I went through the paces and tried to investigate and learn what an aircraft is, where airplanes were flying, what a drone would look like, what blah, 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 blah. And to this day, I still can't really say that what I saw was explainable.
Well, it's hard to say. Again, you have to try, get as much photographic evidence as you can, and because if nothing else, it'll record the position of where you were, and if there's anything in the background, like mountains or something, we can see where it was with respect to them. If it's moving with respect to the mountains, that will tell us too. And if you can zoom in really nice and close, if it's something like an airplane or some other artificial object, you should be able to see enough structure on it to tell what it is. If you magnify it and you see a big dome and you see an alien face in it, well, then then you really got something.
But you still won't believe it. But if they do, though, they're
they're camera shy. I know that.
So, do you think, though, because you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you'd had a couple interesting things that kind of led you down this path, and then you realized after you had studied this that they were explainable. But, is there any part of you that is open to the fact that there is something more phenomenal going on here? Or is this everything
I would
just
be very happy if this were true, and if somebody could really prove, well, look, we have a landing, here's a good close-up video, here's landing, here's a whole bunch of independent witnesses seeing this thing come down and so on. I'd be very happy if that happened. That'd be amazing, but I really don't think it is. I think if you study the history of human, shall we say, self-deception, and in previous ages and even in our own age, I mean, people are seeing not just UFOs. There are probably more people, and there are definitely more people who see angels than see UFOs. Now, some people believe that angels come down from heaven and visit with people. I don't think that's true, and I think anybody who sees or says that they see an angel is either very mistaken or is hallucinating or is making up a story. And it's not just angels. People see fairies. People see Bigfoot. Did you ever see Bigfoot? I never did, but
I've never seen him. No, maybe
I've been out looking for him with. I don't know. If
might have gone on a date with him once or twice, but
yeah, did he smell that bad?
Pretty much.
Yeah, it could be. Well, I went on a camping trip once with Eric Beckyard. If you know who he was, he died about 10 years ago. He was a Bigfoot researcher, and he was one of these larger-than-life figures that, he was convinced that Bigfoot was paranormal. In fact, he even got, in fist fights with, who William Cooper was, with the, what was it, Behold a Pale Horse, the UFO author who wrote that very strange book. He and Beckyard got into a fist fight at one of these conferences. I don't even recall what it was about. But Beckyard, he confirmed, this is what happened. And of course, Cooper ended up getting shot by the police, and as in a shootout.
Okay.
When he tried to serve a warrant on him. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a well-known story. True.
Wow.
But I went out, there was a spot in California in the Sierras, kind of uphill from, if you know where Jackson, California is, not too far from Sacramento. And you go up the hill on, I forget the number of the road, the highway, and into the national forest there. And there's a particular spot that Beckyard identified where his paranormal Bigfoot could be seen. And so we camped there for a couple days, and of course we didn't see anything, but that's what happens when there's a skeptic around. Bigfoot never shows. He would take photographs of the trees and then look, later on enlarge the leaves and look for faces and things like that, because there were, paranormal faces of Bigfoot in the leaves. Sometimes he did come up with some pretty odd looking photos, but it has a lot, I think, just to do with your own what your imagination is willing to see in these kind of random splotches and blobs that you get when you magnify things too much. And of course, he said that after I had left, and then some other friends of his met him there, they saw, or at least heard, I guess, Bigfoot whooping it up or whatever, making noise at night and things. So, but this doesn't happen when there's a skeptic around. And that's on my blog also. If you look up Bigfoot on my blog, I've got that whole account there. And in fact, I've even got actually the GPS coordinates of where the Bigfoot. See, because while Beckyard was alive, he didn't want anybody to say exactly where this was, other than just in the general sense of it was in, I forget the name of the area, because he didn't want bad people to go out there and mess with Bigfoot or whatever. So, but now I don't think anybody is going there. If somebody wants to go there and look for Bigfoot, they're welcome to try.
But I mean, you have to admit that, we're making discoveries about our planet and about the universe every day, and we don't know, we would be completely egocentric to think that what we know now is the beginning and the end of everything. And so wouldn't it be plausible that there could be a creature like Bigfoot? Wouldn't it be plausible that there could be intelligent life that we haven't identified?
Not on our planet, not intelligent life. Look at how much, how we spread out, and we, we make our presence known, so to speak, by pretty much monkeying with everything we come into contact with. And I would think other intelligent life would do that. Bigfoot as an actual living, breathing animal, hominid, makes no sense. Especially the people who are, knowledgeable about the things like, animal tracking and whatever the biologists. I mean, an animal that size requires a certain amount of food each day, large amount, not just a small amount, because it's a large animal. You've got to have more than one. You've got to have a breeding population. What's the smallest breeding population? You would have droppings. You would have so many things. When a creature would die, the body would be found. So, I mean, there's just so, and Beck, you'd realize this. He understood that you could not realistically argue that you had a living animal, and so he said it was paranormal.
But I've just got to say that there are plenty of places on the earth that we don't. I mean, we aren't. I mean, there's wilderness underwater. How we don't have funding. We don't have people out there constantly monitoring.
With the mermaids, I mean,
you're so sarcastic.
I don't think so. But you have been to this so-called Skinwalker Ranch that's in Utah. Have you?
You know what? I have been out there, not necessarily on the ranch, but investigating around that area, and it is quite curious.
Have you seen anything? They say they have all kinds of paranormal manifestations and things there, allegedly. Did you see anything like that?
No, I haven't seen anything. But then again, I think that's one of those things that you would need to really move there, set up shop. And we know that paranormal or, the UFO stuff doesn't happen on command. I mean, it's like I was saying, it's boring. You have to be there. You have to, spend a bit of time. So all I can do is get out there and get witness testimony and do different things and research stuff. But there are places like this all over the world.
Rent an RV and stay there for a week.
I would love to.
Photograph everything you can.
Are you going to come with me?
Sure.
And we'll get our lawn chairs out. And again, we're going to do the CE5 protocols.
All right. Like I say, do you know that's almost like, reciting the Mass in Latin or something. Seriously, when this guy in Mexico, when he was doing his CE5 protocols, and he had learned from Greer, because Greer had just been there not too long before, I really had the feeling that, hey, I'm sitting in a church and I'm listening to this minister, say these prayers. And he was saying them in Spanish, of course, but I guess does that work as well? Do the aliens understand Spanish, or you have to talk in English? I'm not really sure how that works, but.
Well, I am not sure, but okay, let me ask you this. Do you believe in God?
No, they tried to make a Catholic out of me, but I'm not very good at believing things like that, especially things, that I can't see and things that, frankly, to me don't make a lot of sense. So, you don't think that there is anything more to life than where we are now, this physical reality? If you mean our life, I think that's true. Who knows what's out there in some faraway galaxy somewhere. But, for us, I think that when we're dead, we're done for.
That's, I think that energy doesn't die, but I think
not really energy is so much. Let's put it this way. Think of the old-fashioned TV sets, because they're more dramatic than the kind we have now, the flat screens. The old kind with the picture tube and so on. And then you're watching a movie or something, and then somebody comes along with a brick, and they hurl the brick right through the picture tube, and it smashes up the picture tube and smashes up everything. Well, where did the picture go? What's the energy? The energy can't be destroyed. It has to still be there. Yeah, there's not really energy as such. It's just a pattern that happens to be there. And when you destroy that pattern, it doesn't work anymore. And so in a sense, we're like that. Living things are like that. All living things.
So at the end of the day, I've just got to ask, because we're getting ready to wrap up, but you've spent your whole adult life debunking this.
Yes, I also have debunker.com as a website, which
you do.
People might want to take a look at that. That's mostly the older materials. The newer ones and specifically UFO-related ones are on badufos.com.
Well, I think that's great. And I like I said, I really enjoy talking to you, and I want to know, what am I going to give to you that will make you believe, and why do I even care?
Well, if I were convinced, then I would put on my blog that, hey, this is amazing, and then I think people would take it seriously, at least in terms of investigating it, because if they say, oh, if he thinks it might be something to it, then it's not just some silly, there's so many hoaxes out there and everything, these things on YouTube, Secure Team 10 and all this, and what third phase of moon, that these people are just putting out hoax after hoax after hoax. They're maybe not doing the hoax themselves. Other people send it to them in many cases, and they just put it out. Watch this. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, there are a lot of people that want to capitalize on this, and obviously they're putting out really crummy quality things, to mislead people, whatever. I mean, that's the way it rolls. But there also is really good, important, credible research being done. And I will talk about Hessdahl until the cows come home, because this is 30 plus years of scientific data. And so, in my opinion, we need to refocus everything away from all of this, the circus and all of this nonsense that's going on, and focus on research that is being done and that is scientific.
Well, if you can bring back something as scientific, I would be very delighted to see it.
Well, in 50 years, what progress have we made? You've been in this almost that long.
Yeah, pretty much. Because, in fact, I was, following this, like the Condon Report, in real time when this was happening. And I was at Northwestern at the time, and I was taking astronomy classes from Hynek. And he would have comments about this, as things went along. And of course, when their conclusions were published and everything, Hynek was fit to be tied, and so were all the other people, David Saunders and so on, who were involved in this, and John G. Fuller, who wrote The Interrupted Journey. He was writing, at that time for Look magazine. Some of us can remember magazines. People used to read them, to get the news and features and everything, and nobody reads them anymore. But he was writing for Saturday Evening Post, I think. It was tremendously, and also Look magazine. I mean, these were tremendously influential and important. That would be like going on CNN now, and so they would have nothing good to say about the Condon Report.
But I mean, I don't know. I honestly think in my heart, and after talking to you, you would not be here if you didn't think there was something.
Well, I think it's a fascinating aspect of human culture, and it combines, a number of my interests. It combines astronomy, and knowledge of astronomy is very helpful if you're going to be investigating UFOs. In fact, I would say it's invaluable if somebody reports something in the night sky, but they're not familiar with stars and the planets. Then I would take their report less seriously than somebody who really, is familiar with objects, with the sky. So it's
so a pilot sighting.
Well, it's very interesting. Now, some people, like for example, Leslie Kean in her book, is saying that pilots. It's almost like a perfect laboratory when there's a jet pilot flying around and a crew, and they see something. It's about perfect conditions and so on. Actually, Alan Hynek didn't agree with that. Based on his investigations, he said pilots surprisingly make relatively poor witnesses, because their main concentration is, what do I have to do for the safety of this aircraft? Do I have to, roll it or pitch or yaw or go up, go down, whatever? And they're doing, so it turns out that, a lot of their reports are not that accurate. At least, this is what Hynek reported. And there's other, support for that also.
So who makes a good witness?
Well, an astronomer, experienced, not necessarily somebody who's a PhD in astronomy and works in astrophysics and does equations, doesn't do isn't in fact, I talked with one professional astronomer I talked to. He said, I really don't even know the constellations. I think I could find Orion, but that's about it.
That's okay. Nobody makes. Who makes a good witness? In my opinion,
an observational astronomer, an experienced amateur astronomer.
I think a pilot.
There's a few people like that. There's a few reports from people like this, but not very many.
Well, this is interesting, and I'm definitely going to have you back on because this has been a fascinating conversation. I knew it would be, and you are delightful, and even if you're naughty, even if you like to, cause a little trouble, but that's okay.
Now, is it time to sing?
Yes, you got to sing. You got to close it out.
Here we go.
Okay.
La donna immobile, qual fiume al vento, muta d'accento e di pensiero. La donna immobile, muta d'accento e di pensiero. E di pensiero e di
Oh, you rock it out. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, Robert Schaefer is here. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. You guys have a great weekend.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio